Hello, and welcome to Dopey, the podcast on drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. I'm Dave. This is actually my childhood home and my childhood bedroom, and I'm with none other than fucking strung out author, elite equestrian, old friend who hasn't been around in a long time, unlicensed advice columnist. Am I forgetting anything?
I don't think so. I know you're rusty. It's been months since I've been on the show.
Serious haver of obsessive compulsive disorder. Erin Khar, welcome back to the show.
Serious haver of...
You're a haver.
Of OCD?
Well, what is the decanting everything? Isn't that OCD?
No.
What is that?
That's just
Orderly?
that I like things to look nice.
That's orderly?
But it's not like I'm going to die if it's not like that.
Now, Erin, you've recorded probably 25 episodes of Dopey.
At least, yeah.
Thereabouts. What's different now?
There's a whole studio.
What do you think? What is it? It feels a little different.
It does.
Does it feel a little bit intimidating now?
No.
What about him?
I mean, I think it's nice having Howie here.
Howard Beach Bucksbaum on the scene. Look at him. He's doing his taxes while we're doing the show. What are you doing?
Wait, I feel my chair is really squeaky. Hold on there.
Howie, is there a chair squeak? Can you do something about that?
No, it's good now. I moved it.
Do you have any
WD-40? It was like rubbing against. No, it was rubbing against the bookcase.
I feel like we're very far apart. We
are. I know. We'd usually be catty corner like that, like as if we were at a table having a conversation. And this is like people who have like a long dining room table and they sit at opposite ends. I mean, it's not that exaggerated, but you know.
But then it is.
But kind of.
So this is the room that I grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that strange?
It is strange. Look are those your Dr. Seuss books?
No.
Oh.
They took this room over probably a month after I left.
Right.
No. I this room was still my room from 1975. I bet we moved in here from 1975 until 1996.
Oh, wow.
This was my room. So that's a 21 year run. And then it was kind of determined that I would never return. And it's weird to record the show. And look how small the room is too.
Well, yeah, but you know, it's New York.
Now, forget about me in my room and all this stuff. Erin, you haven't been on the show in forever.
I know.
Do you miss being on the show?
Of course.
You seem to have a good time messing around with me and Howie before.
Totally. I definitely have missed it. I mean, it's a combination of reasons. I haven't been on the show. Number one, my fall was really busy with volunteering stuff.
Not your decline.
My autumn. No, not the fall of Erin Khar. No. Yeah, my autumn was busy. And then you know that I kind of like from like the middle of November on, I did start sort of a fall into like probably the worst depression and anxiety slump that I've been in a very long time.
Now, I'm very sorry that happened, but it's really good for the show when things like that happen. I wish you had relapsed because then it could really be a much better episode. But, you know, that's an important topic in general. Like how do you feel like shit and not relapse?
Right.
And then, or how do you feel like shit and live with it?
Right.
So because last year, 2 years ago, you had this, the thyroid thing where they cut open your neck.
Yeah.
Point to it. So, you know, we're on TV here. And she has this very spooky scar.
I like it because it looks like maybe I got in a fight or something.
It looks like
a knife fight. Somebody shanked me.
Serious business. But you coped with these physical things.
Yeah.
So tell us what happened.
So, I mean, I think that the news has been very depressing. I have felt overwhelmed by the onslaught of depressing news of the world and the country, and that certainly contributed to it. There may be like a slight seasonal component.
Do you usually get seasonally disaffected?
Not really, except for January. Historically, as my mother reminded me, has always been a hard month for me my entire life. So I feel like, and even when I lived in California, so I don't know if it's like the post-holiday thing. You know,
the daunting nature of the first month of the year.
I guess I had like, and my like most severe bottom, which wasn't when my most severe bottom, which wasn't when I actually finally got sober, but was in like January and early February of 2001.
What was your most severe bottom?
When I was smoking crack.
Well,
I had relapsed.
Take us down that crack-filled memory before we get into your recent depression.
So I was in my era of like constant relapse, and I had relapsed, and my boyfriend at the time he relapsed after I did, and he smoked crack in addition to doing heroin, and so then I tried it, and then I hated it, but I couldn't stop. I've never hated a drug more and couldn't stop. Like cocaine had done before and didn't really like and just was fine. Like I didn't have the urge to do it, but crack, that shit was so bad. I was like hallucinating.
Were you living in LA in that time?
Living in LA.
Were you living with your boyfriend?
Yeah. Well, no, not technically, but he was basically living with me. He had his own place, but he was at my place all the time.
Your boyfriend was over. Forgive me for not remembering a lot of it, but I always like these stories. There's something wrong with me. The other day, my sponsee, current sponsee, it's okay. It's really attractive. A sponsee came on the show who had just gotten out of jail, and he told a story about he was sober for I think he smoked weed. He was mostly sober for 2 years. He goes to jail and he decides to smoke like basically PCP in jail. And I was like, this is fantastic. And it's my sponsee. It's like, there's something total. It's like, tell me more. I need to know. So I want to hear like the ins and outs of your crack compulsion before you got sober.
So, we were just smoking a lot of crack. It became...
Who'd you get the crack from?
I was buying... This is like when the dealer I had gotten busted, or he didn't get busted. He almost got busted, and he like took off somewhere. And so we were going downtown. We were going to, like 6th and Bonnie Bray, areas around MacArthur Park. And then we found it. We had a heroin dealer, and she would meet us, or like whoever was there, in the parking lot of the Burger King on 3rd and Alvarado. And she would get in my car and we'd drive around the block like I was picking her up. And then I'd drive her to her apartment. She lived nearby. And then we did have a crack dealer who lived on 6th Street right near there, who I like gave jewelry that I stole from my mother to. It was bad. This was the only time where like I was like stealing shit from my parents. I pawned everything, sold things. I was a mess.
And you were still on heroin then too?
I was still on heroin too.
And then how did you get out of it all?
So we, at the time, like in that era, there was a doctor in Beverly Hills who would help you detox. So we had gone back to him again and like got medication so that we could come off the heroin.
Would they give you Suboxone or methadone? Or?
No, Suboxone didn't exist.
No, so what'd they give you?
So he would give us Norcos, which is
right.
Norcos, and like
everybody
like
loves
benzos,
right?
And
comfort meds.
Yeah, basically just to ease your landing, and like gave you a schedule for tapering the Norco or whatever. But the Norco didn't do shit. I was like, I felt like it was like a placebo. And we woke up, we had been kicking for like 14 hours. And then the next morning he's like, fuck this. And he was like going to go pawn his last guitar. And when he left, there was just something inside me that said, I'm either going to go to the roof of my building and jump off, or I have to fucking get out of here. And I called my ex-boyfriend, and he was working as a film editor at the time, and he couldn't come right then. He had another friend of mine who was sober come to get me, who, if anyone has read my book, Diana, and she and I had used together a lot, but she was sober. And when she came to pick me up, I don't even know what I packed. I was like, she was like looking through my bag, and it was like 20 pairs of underwear, but like no clothes. Like, like it was crazy. And my school books, because I was in college. So and I thought I was going to like, just be like, I'm just going to go to class tomorrow. Yeah. So, the way you do. And then before we left, my boyfriend came back, and he had heroin with him, and he was like, don't leave. Like, I got dope, like, da-da-da. And he, like, like plopped a piece of tar onto foil, like right in front of us. And like, offered it to me. And it was that moment of like what my decision is. And my friend was like, Erin, let's go. And we just left. And when we got outside, we sat down on the curb because she was like shaking so badly because she had only like maybe like 6 months off of heroin. And then I realized like how fucked up that was for her. And then later that day, my ex-boyfriend came and picked me up. I stayed with him that night. And in the morning, I said that I wanted to go back to rehab. And so I think he called my mom and I talked to her and I had insurance that was going to cover it. That's when I went to treatment and Dr. Drew was my doctor that time.
Was that the Elliott Smith, Rick James treatment?
Yep.
That's the best one.
Yeah.
And do you remember any songs they played together?
You asked me that before, but I don't know.
Did they play Hotel California or California Dreamin'?
No.
Those were my big rehab tunes. I'd get everyone to sing California Dreamin'.
There was also a country singer there at the same time, and I cannot for the life of me remember his name, and I have a good memory, and I never wrote down in my journal from that era, I wrote I gave everybody like code names. I'm like, who the fuck is country singer or football player? There was a guy there that was like, had been also like well-known college football player, got injured, never made it to the pros, whatever. Anyway, there were a lot of musicians there. There was a guy we called the Vampire because he was like kind of goth, and he came in and he'd sit at the piano and play it.
But you don't remember do you think that was the only, do you remember Elliott Smith and Rick James playing together at all?
Yes, because, I know that the country singer, they were all together. I don't know who was playing, but my bungalow, my bungalow backed up to the, oh my God, why can't I think of his name? The big guy that went to rehab a lot from the 20s, actor.
The big guy.
Oh my God.
Oh, I know who it is.
He's in my book. I can't remember his name.
I know who you're talking about.
This is like what happens now.
He's
like
got the big cheeks, rosy cheeks. It's a famous alcoholic.
Yeah.
His name is Al Jolson.
No. I'm gonna remember.
What's that famous Howie? What's that famous alcoholic's name? It's
like it starts with a W.
Yeah, W.C. Fields.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
God, why couldn't I? So the rumor was that was the one bungalow that had a wider door, and what I was told, the legend was that they made that door wider so that he could get in it. So they were sitting on that porch. I don't even remember whose bungalow that was, but my bungalow was on the other side, and I wasn't even there yet. I was still in detox, and they were all sitting on the porch playing guitar and singing. I'm not 100% sure who was playing guitar. It could have been the country singer, but they were all just kind of like laughing and talking and like.
It's hard to imagine Elliott Smith laughing with Rick James. Isn't it? Isn't that just hard to imagine?
I mean,
like,
but
what would be funnier, like if Rick James played, what's the Elliott Smith big song?
Ballad of Big Nothing?
Or Heaven and now, I'm not a man anyhow, huh? Howie, just produce. Just run the
like remixed
switches.
with Brick House or something.
No, if Rick James did that song and fucking Elliott Smith like did Super Freak or something.
I'm fairly certain they did not play their own songs.
Elliott Smith was such a sad character, and Rick James was so joyful.
He was not a boisterous person. There's a phone ringing somewhere.
And Howie, the camera just went off. It went red. Not good. Not good.
It looks like it's on.
It went red for a second. It went red. Now it's green. Now, do you think Rick James, I'm obsessed with the Elliott Smith, Rick James connection, but you don't remember, do you think they got along? Do you think they were like friends?
No, they totally got along. I mean, I don't know how close they were because they were there, like they were at the end of their journey when I got there. So I was in the detox ward I think only one night I was in the detox ward. And then I went to the bungalow and they were only there for a few days with me.
And poor Elliott Smith wound up stabbing himself to death, right?
They both died within like 2 years, I think, of that. It was really sad. And they were both really, I mean, everybody was very nice. Like everyone that I met at that rehab, I mean, both times, Like everybody was really nice.
Now, to segue real quickly,
Yes.
in your very depressed state,
Yes.
were you listening to a lot of Elliott Smith or
No.
Rick James?
No, I wasn't really listening to that much music. I was watching, I don't even remember what. Here's
Summer
the thing,
House.
I don't
Lots
even.
of Summer House.
I definitely was watching a lot of Bravo, but I don't know. I was just, yeah. This was like a dark time. And, March 5th, it'll be 22 years of recovery. I'm not at the place like.
Howie clap.
You need like an applause machine.
I have one on
the
my,
other thing.
Yeah, on the better system.
I don't like, it's been a long time since I was like, thought like getting high would be a good solution. And I think part of that, like we've talked about, is that like, I relapsed so many times and it just didn't give me the relief I needed the last couple of years that I was using. And when I've had opiates like after surgery or something, it doesn't give me that like any of like the fun part of it. It's just the sort of like nauseous, anxious part of it. And I have always joked that I like used up all of my opiate fun receptors. So that doesn't feel like a viable option to me. Like that's where my brain goes, is like, just like, I don't want to be like, the sort of like tape in my head is, I just don't want to be here anymore. I don't want to be here. And like, that is a very scary place to be. And I think that like, I mean, there are certainly moments where I think the only thing that stops me from like following that train of thought is my kids. And that's not to say that people who do end their lives don't love their kids. They certainly do. Because I know that part of that tape is like, everyone would be better off without you. You're a burden, emotional burden to everybody. I mean, it was a really, really hard couple of months.
Well, it's a long distance between I don't want to be here and I want to not be alive. Like the I don't want to be here. I remember feeling both of those things in active addiction. I don't want to be here and I don't want to be alive. You're in recovery, 22 years.
Yeah.
You have a beautiful life.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that I felt so guilty because there's nothing in my personal life that's been going wrong.
Take us through like, and I'm sorry to do this, but I'm sure it'll help somebody to talk about, if nothing else. Now, like the decline, like from, because DopeyCon,
I was fine. I mean, I was definitely overextended in the autumn in terms of like volunteering stuff, which was fine. But I think that like the election and sort of like the vitriol around from people, like the day or two after the election, when there were like all these reports of teenage boys at middle schools, like shouting at girls, "Your body, my choice." Like, I'm not trying to make this political at all, but like, as somebody who has been raped, who was sexually abused, to like see somebody in office who was found guilty in a court of law of sexual assault feels like nobody fucking cares. Like, half of the cabinet member appointees have major allegations against them. And I just think like that's it just makes me sad, because it brings me back to the place of feeling like a young girl where I don't have agency over my own body. The sort of restriction in like reproductive medicine is frightening to me, even though obviously I'm at an age where like I'm aging out of that. But it breaks my fucking heart that like I have fewer rights today than I did the day I was born. And I can't believe that, and it feels like there's just like this rollback. And then, I think sort of like it's not like it was 20 years ago where you could have differing political beliefs, but you understood that you both
had the right to exist.
Both people had, but not just that, but both people had like good intentions. Like, I may not agree politically with everything that this person did or what their viewpoint is, but I think that they believe that they're doing what's best for the country. And I feel like increasingly I'm seeing people who think that the rules don't apply to them, that like they live outside any sort of moral standards. in terms of how they treat people. Like, I just feel like, and I think like as a parent, having to stay hopeful for my children and like the world that they're inheriting is fucking heartbreaking. As a parent, I have to, because I feel like that is part of my duty as a parent, right? If we don't, like, part of like the sort of strongest face of hope is maintaining it even in the face of a lot of oppression. And I think that I think I'm probably a fairly empathetic person, and I think that like what endangers us, and this is, you know, I know like this includes like climate change, right? I think that what endangers us as a species is our inability to care for one another. And that is just across the board.
Wait, so that's what endangers us as
I think that like that's what will end humans is our inability to care about people.
It's weird though, because where I live, they're very happy
Right.
with the results. They have this great faith that what has transpired will be good for everybody, and they feel reassured with the world, and they're not like evil doers.
No, and I think that the majority of people who support I think the majority of those people are not coming from a bad place. I don't believe that all of the people who are in power are coming from a good place.
I just think it's fascinating, like how divided everybody is, and like one of my very close friends is constantly like sending me texts like how excited he is at, and not like to ship immigrants away, and like he's excited that like he thinks the country is going to be in a better situation. But I don't want to go down
no, I mean, we're not like going down a political, I mean, it's
no, but
like,
even more than that, it's more like you looked at this situation and you were like, fuck, it's scary, and you feel like you don't have agency, and you feel like almost more alone, more like separate from. It's also like the country voted for him. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like they didn't vote for him. So it's like
they did, but he won by a narrower margin. The last president who won by this narrow of a margin was Nixon. There are a lot of people who didn't vote,
right,
or voted third party, right, and that. There were a lot of protest votes in there and everything. And I mean, I'm not going to get into all that, but I think that I don't believe it's the majority of the country that voted this president in. And I think that increasingly, because we have a lack of participation in the process of politics, that plays into it. And I think a lot of times there's like a short-sightedness, and I see this a lot in like advocacy work around harm reduction. There's a short-sightedness in thinking that making sure that the sickest people in society are healthy is actually going to put more money into your wallet. Because I think that that's what it comes down to. People are like, I don't have time to worry about this motherfucker on the street because my eggs are expensive, which the irony being, of course, that now eggs are even more expensive. But I think that there's a short-sightedness in that. I think that like when you look at the data, and this is one of the things I do when I speak with congressional reps and senators about this issue, when you look at the data and the studies they did on the opioid crisis, the economic fallout of the people who died or were pushed, went out of the workforce because of that, ends up costing us more money than if we had put support systems in place and bolstered programs for treatment. And it's the same way where like if you put somebody into like a program, like a medicated assisted treatment program where they get Suboxone or methadone, plus counseling once a week, plus they're seeing a doctor for physical health care, and you put them in that program for a year, it costs under $3,000 for the government to do that. Versus close to $40,000 to incarcerate somebody over a drug offense.
I guess what I really want to know, though, is like you've been dealing with regime after regime, bad decision after bad decision, without being like, I don't want to live. And this, or I don't want to be here, or without serious depression. What do you think the difference was this time? Because
the moves that are being made are changing, are unconstitutional, are challenging the Constitution. That's why all of the executive orders are going to the courts.
So it's
sort of unprecedented.
You think it's really this thing that...
No, I think that it's a contributing factor, right? I think that the powerlessness that I feel, like, that's a big trigger for me when I feel like there's something where, like, I cannot figure out any way to make it better, to control it, to accept it. And
right.
It just feels sort of
too toxic for you to accept.
It just feels like heartbreaking. It just feels heartbreaking to me. I feel heartbroken that we're this divided. I feel heartbroken that the things that I think people are like so upset about, like some of the books that are being banned, I can't believe it. Like in this, the book banning thing, as like a writer, I just like...
What books are banned?
Oh, there's like Julianne Moore's children's book called Freckle Face, about a little girl who has freckles and feels different, has been banned.
Well, that one makes sense, I think.
But
and
like,
the cherry on top is January is moving along, and Erin says to herself, you know what can make me feel better? Maybe getting a dog will make me feel better.
So then, that was right after the election. I ended up fostering and then adopting a dog who's great. But
that was right after the election?
Like 2 weeks after the election.
You were like, I need some a social.
Well, I
need
had
a service dog to help me with my...
I don't know. Yes, for sure. I was like needing... I think that I realized our cat died in September. And even though I wasn't as like attached to him as I was to my dog who died a few years ago, not having a pet in the house for the first time in a really long time, that absence of like sort of that connection you have with animals was like not good for me. And then I got this dog, but she's still really young. And she was like, she came from Texas and was having a hard time adjusting to the city. So that put this other layer of stress on top of it. And I just felt like everything, like I was like, the only time that I was happy was like after my child had gone to bed and I got to watch TV in bed for like an hour or two. But then as it got closer to me falling asleep, I'd start to have like an anxiety attack because I knew I had to wake up in the morning and do it all over again.
And as it got later, you couldn't enjoy the... So how did you start getting out of it?
So the first thing that I did, I definitely was, I did talk to my husband about it. At first I was kind of like holding everything in, and then I did share the fact that I was feeling like this with some friends. And then I had scheduled an emergency appointment with my psychiatrist and with my therapist because I'm out of my depths here. Like, yes, 22 years of recovery has given me a lot of tools. That doesn't mean that like I always have the answers or I'm always capable of using the tools, right? So I needed to have that extra support. I needed to know, like, is there anything we need to do with my medication, right? So one of the things that my doctor had me do, because I was having such bad, like really bad anxiety attacks at night. So he's like, I want you to take a Klonopin an hour before bed, like for the next few nights, even if you don't feel anxious, just for a few nights. And then you can see, like, if you're feeling okay, you don't have to take it. And I did that. And I took it for 3 nights in a row. And what it did is like, I never abused benzos. And
Really?
Yeah. I just, why? Because I knew that they were really hard to get off of. So I was like, but and they don't do that thing for me. They don't flip that switch for me.
Yeah, Linda always says that.
I was kind of like, it does literally, I don't feel like any different other than, oh, wait, when I woke up at 3 a.m. to pee, I didn't get sent into a panic attack.
Right.
So I did that. And then there were a couple other nights and he said, if you wake up in the morning like that, you take one in the morning. And I think maybe one day I took one, but I basically took beta blockers. So then for like a couple weeks, I was taking a beta blocker, which is very innocuous, twice a day, like once in the morning, once in the afternoon.
Like Boost Bar?
No, it's like a beta blocker, just keeps your heart rate from going too high.
Like, what's it called?
It's a heart medication. Propranolol.
Okay.
It's not like there's no narcotic effect. I would take them before like speaking engagements to prevent like an adrenaline crash. So I was doing that. And then I like had extra therapy and, I think that, and then we put the dog into like a board and train program. And I think like just kind of like taking actions because for a couple of weeks there, I felt like just stuck in this depression and anxiety where it felt like I know, as I tell people all the time, as I've told my older son, like everything that you feel, good and bad, will always change. You're not going to be stuck in this feeling forever.
And you had that built in?
Well, I knew that, but it was like two parts of my brain fighting with each other.
Did
right?
you ever want to kill the dog? Put it in a bag, throw it in the river?
No, but I wanted to, I wanted to kill myself. It's like I was really at that place where I was like I really don't want to be here. I don't want to witness what's happening in the country. I just don't want to be here.
So what's the close, like you call that ideation?
Yes.
And what's the closest to the worst ideation? Like, what does the worst ideation look like?
I mean, I think the worst ideation are times when I got into actual self-harm, like, with like cutting myself.
But not this year.
No, I did not.
So this year, like, what's the worst it gets? Or as soon as you're like,
the worst it got is like me, like freaking out and in front of my child and husband sobbing on the floor.
Right.
Saying that I wanted to die. And like, my older son saw me do that like early in his life because I was newly sober and I was having a hard time with emotional regulation. My younger son had never, ever witnessed that. The good thing about it is then we have a conversation about it and a conversation about like what I was feeling and like what I was doing to like, I knew that I had to ask for help. So I had talked to my doctor and, and
so what do you say to Franklin?
Exactly that. I told him that I was sorry if it scared him and that I shouldn't have said what I said and that I didn't really mean what I said at the moment. It was like, I just felt like I wanted to rip my skin off.
Just crazy overwhelmed.
Yeah. Just so overwhelmed with that feeling. And, and then I think there's, like I said, I think I had a little bit of like shame about it because I felt like I have no reason to feel this way. I have a husband who's great. We have financial stability. I'm not like, my children are healthy. I'm healthy. Like there's nothing happening directly in my life where I should be having this kind of reaction.
But Erin, if you're you or you're not you and your best friend is in your situation and says, my life is so beautiful and yet I'm feeling hopeless that I don't want to be here and there's no reason I should feel that way. What do you say to them?
I mean, first thing is like 100%. I think that you need to have professional support.
And you would say it's not, the correlation is not there. It doesn't matter what you have.
100%. No, you can be, like one thing I have said for years in like my writing is like grief and gratitude are not mutually exclusive. And I think that there was also grief in there, right? Grief for like, how I thought things were going to be for my children and how they are. Grief. And then I think that also, another part of it is like this time of year, like January, February, like historically in my life, I've lost a lot of people from like the end of December to the middle of February. And like, I think it triggers all of that loss. So that's underneath there too.
Right. It's compounded. It's also shitty weather.
Yeah,
the days
for
are fucking
sure.
short. Like, it's like,
And it was so cold this January.
and there's also just the thing, like, every year is like climbing a mountain,
Right.
and you're at the base of the mountain, and
Yeah.
you're like, what the fuck is this year going to be? And I'm starting at a negative place,
Mhm.
and it all adds up.
And like, truthfully, like, I was really trying to stay off of social media because everything on social media was just sending me into panic. And I think that's part of it too, is that like you'd see something, I'd read something or see something, and then I would feel like that fight or flight feeling. And that makes me want to push people away. That makes me want to like go hide in a cave and never come
Isolate,
out,
yeah.
you know, and like, and I was just like, like I said, like the good news is like, it's not like, I'm not at the point anymore that it's about drugs. It's really about my mental health. Which is good and bad, because it's like, I think we've talked about this before. Like, it was a lot easier for me to be honest about my drug use than about my mental health, because I felt more shame about the ideation and self-harm and that kind of stuff.
And people always say like you hear it like, oh, I'm in recovery for X amount of years, and why isn't everything exactly the way I want it to be? Or like, why am I bummed out? And,
because life continues to happen,
right,
even when you're in recovery.
Yeah, and things aren't always going to go.
No.
Like, you can be sober and shit can get fucking terrible.
Totally. And like, again, like the best part of it is that like there is that part of me, even in my darkest moments, that I'm still trying to use the tools that I have, right? And part of that on some days was allowing myself to, if you need to just stay in bed today, you can do that. And that, like, that's hard for me to like not do anything. So I did some of that. And then,
how much did you give yourself shit because you're supposed to be, Erin Khar?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Ask Erin,
right.
unlicensed advice columnist.
I mean,
like person in long-term
Yeah.
recovery, person
who
who's
has
supposed
the
to be
answers.
who has the answers to everything.
Right.
Which is a lot of pressure that you put on yourself regularly.
But I think part of it is like, like the tagline being, my advice column has always been, she's made all the mistakes so you don't have to. So I kind of look at it like, I am not a perfect person giving advice.
Right.
I'm a person who's giving advice as I would to any friend. So, and that advice is based on my experiences. So I try to always look at these experiences as not negative things, but like they're periods of growth, right? So I feel change, every time you go through something like this, it changes you. It changes your DNA a little bit.
Hold on though, because you were in a horrible place, and I appreciate you crying on the show, but you are in a better place
Yes.
now. And why don't you, like, for anybody, because I'm sure there's somebody out there struggling with depression. And if you are, please send in a video of you crying to the show at dopeypodcast@gmail.com. That could be very useful. If you're struggling, send in an email or a voicemail. And Erin, what's the playbook?
So the playbook, if any kind of professional support you can access, 100% telling the people you trust in your life what's going on with you. Shortly, as I was kind of, oh, now my nose is running. I was
Excellent.
sort of feeling
That's
that
even better than tears.
that like the fog was starting to lift a little. I wrote a Substack about it, like why I hadn't been posting. And so many people emailed or messaged me saying how much they appreciated it because they'd been struggling. And, I think that's like, it's like the adage, our secrets keep us sick. I think that like things have a lot less power when we don't keep them.
We're only as sick as our secrets. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Keep going. I apologize.
I think that, we give things a lot of power when we keep them locked inside of us. And then also I decided to sort of like limit myself to sort of like what I expose myself to in terms of like politics.
So you only follow Elon and Trump now?
No. Like for me, hearing Trump's voice is triggering for me. So I have successfully not heard his voice for months. So every time he's come on, if I don't have control over the volume, I'll put my AirPods in. If I have control over the volume, I mean, I stopped watching any news on like any video or anything.
What about old Apprentice episodes?
No.
You're not into that?
No.
Okay.
And I did watch that show when it was on.
He was very likable.
But yeah, so those are the things, and not staying ill-informed, but kind of like limiting how I'm doing it. And then I'm also getting involved in sort of politics on a city level at the moment.
Here we go.
And I think I will say to anyone who is feeling, no matter what your political leanings are, if you are feeling disenfranchised, if you are feeling like you don't have a voice or a seat at the table, the easiest path to doing that is getting involved in city politics, because no matter what city you're in, the bar for entry, like people don't, a lot of times, some of these positions on like city councils and whatnot are not paid. They're volunteer positions, but you do have a voice. And enshrining protections over what our policies are in our city and our state are our first line of defense if things go real haywire with the federal government. And I think that that's a really important lesson. And it's also then you're in action, right?
So you're like, fuck it, I'm going to put my money where my mouth is.
Yeah.
Do this thing. And then also you're in action, so you're not necessarily stuck in your head.
Yes.
And you're around more people. And
100%. And you're around people who are supportive of, this is what I love about doing advocacy work, is like hooking up with other people. I mean, not like hooking up, but you know what I mean?
Everybody loves hooking up with other people.
Hooking up. That's the answer. Just hook up. Hooking up with other people who...
I was feeling bad, but then I started hooking up with other people, and now I feel much better.
I downloaded Tinder and my life changed.
Yes.
So I think like having, like just getting into action, and then you're also sort of reminded that that you're not alone in sort of like your vision for your city, state, country. And I think that like, I have so many people at different times over the years, like not just this administration, but different administrations have been like, I want to leave the country. And I understand the impulse. However, one of the things that I look at is like, I do have a lot of privilege. I'm exactly the type of person who should stay here and
love it or leave it, baby.
Fight for my city, my state, my country. Like, and I don't mean fight physically. I just mean like, to do the things that I can do legally to protect people and to prevent policies that I think are harmful. That is what politics.
So we're starting at a city level.
Yes.
Do we see Congresswoman Erin Khar, strung out author, elite equestrian, unlicensed advice columnist?
I have to tell you, like, seriously, I've been asked in the last couple of years, like, no joke, like 20, 30 times by different people if I would ever consider running for Congress.
State Assemblywoman Erin Khar?
I would not. Maybe a state position, but the reason that I would not
it's like the other side of the campaign. She smoked crack compulsively for years.
Well, the good thing is that
didn't you read when she was sick and she found the piece of heroin in her sweater?
Clearly, that shit doesn't matter anymore. Yeah. But also, every skeleton I have is in there. I don't have a criminal record. I've never been arrested. And everything, my most shameful secrets, I put in a book. So in that way, like, I'm not worried about that. I wouldn't want to put my family through
the bullshit,
the
rigmarole.
So I would rather do the work either through like lobbying and advocacy, behind the scenes stuff, and definitely on like a smaller like city level.
And it's also like, it's another mountain to climb, which is very exciting.
Yeah, I think it's like, and also, like truthfully, like the publishing industry and the film and TV industry right now are in such turmoil. I have various projects at various stages, but I don't know what's going to happen with any of them. And so I feel like my career also feels like it feels like it's in an unsure, shaky place because of that. So here's something where, like, this is a direct action. I want to feel like I'm contributing something. And I think when I feel like with writing, if I feel like I'm not, like, if all my projects are stalled. And then I'm like, what am I contributing? I'm doing all this work, but I'm not actually contributing anything. But like this conversation is a contribution, like doing the Substack, getting involved with whatever volunteer work I want to do or whatever civic engagement I want to have. That, you know, self-esteem is built on esteemable acts. And those things, they make us feel good and release dopamine for a reason. I need all the dopamine I can get.
For sure. But and it's also like if somebody's listening and they're like, oh, Erin's going to be a politician and I can't do that. It's not about being having a political seat. It's about taking action. It's about trying to do something.
And I'm not like, my goal is like seriously not to be in politics in that way. I just want to I want to be able to have a seat at the table and a voice at the table. And, you know, the one area that I feel like I can speak on with authority is on drug prevention and treatment and harm reduction and drug policy reform. Those are areas that I know how to talk to people of both parties about. I know I can stay focused. If I stay focused on that, it's really good for me because I feel like it's like something that I can work with on a bipartisan level. And then I feel like, okay, this is something where I can actually make a difference.
And you know what you're talking about.
Yes, I can't solve every problem.
But if you were a master crocheter and you were like, I'm going to crochet 50 baby hats and sell them. I'm not saying there's no value judgment, but anybody who has something to do is a way out of feeling like shit.
But I do say that like volunteering in any way, whether it's like going and like, there's so many organizations going and making sandwiches for unhoused people, whatever it is, going and like to a reading program, helping a kid with literacy, like doing any small thing, just going and like picking up trash on the beach or in the park, like any little thing, just being kind to people in your daily interactions. I do believe that has a ripple effect, and that I've had so many times in my life where I had made like some volunteer commitment that I really didn't want to do the day of, and I was in a bad mood, and then I went and I felt like something shifts inside of you because you're not thinking about yourself. You're not staying in like self-centeredness, and you're not, you're doing something that's like builds your self-esteem and your sense of agency and your self-worth. And that's just like, that's all good.
It's the magic of spiritual principles at work. And it's like, I hear you. You see this thing behind you, this fucking astronaut thing?
Yeah.
Howie thinks we should have it on the set. Does that make any sense to you?
It's kind of MTV. It makes me think of MTV.
Was that your purpose for it?
No, it's just something interesting.
He loves that thing. I leaned something up against it and he got upset at me about it.
I just really love
that thing's gotta go.
This Dopey Nation Big Bird from Toodles figures is really good. I love that.
AKA TJ.
Butchie, it's really good.
Can you take that down and show it to the camera?
Yeah.
This is.
Oh wait, no, it's taped.
Howie decided this is his room. This is my room. It's my room. I used to sit on the floor here and masturbate to the movie Annie.
Oh my God, I remember you told me that before. That is like the weirdest.
Right where Erin's sitting.
Oh God.
On the floor.
That's such a strange choice.
There wasn't a reason. It wasn't like
I know, I understand.
I was just sitting there, and that was Howie. When's the first time you remember masturbating to completion? Well, that's when you did. What was your first time, Erin?
It wasn't. I don't think it was to anything.
Well, I don't think Annie. I wasn't like masturbating to
Right.
Annie.
No, but I don't think I was.
I think it was the scene where the criminal was chasing Annie up the bridge. Remember, she's climbing the bridge, and I got very aroused somehow.
Right.
In that, and I don't know.
It was because you were excited.
I was excited. Yes.
How old were you?
I was like 15. I think I was 11. Anyway, so you're feeling a little bit better.
I'm feeling a lot better. And what I'll say is like, fortunately, living in New York, being forced to go outside, and even though I was like having a hard time with the dog, going outside with the dog was like, I had to, right? I had to go outside. I have to walk my son to school. I have to pick him up at the end of the day. That bit of interaction and like being outside helps. today is a beautiful sunny day in New
It
York.
is.
Oh my God.
We took a nice
We
walk.
took a nice
We got
walk.
smoothies.
Yeah, beautiful out. So, you know, and the one thing I know how to do that I didn't know how to do when I was younger is to sit through discomfort. And when I say sit is like not act out when I'm really fucking uncomfortable, like I was. And
Right.
and I'll tell myself like
That's a really hard one though.
but I have like for me as like it comes to like wanting to harm myself, like even just like last month, I literally sat there one day on my hands because I felt like I was going to rip my hair out.
Right.
And that's crazy.
Have you ever ripped your hair out?
Yeah. I mean, not like all of my hair, obviously, but have I ever ripped a piece of my hair out? Sure.
Now, you obviously run a very successful Substack page called Ask Erin, where you do questions
Yes.
and we give advice. And I think we will do.
I'm going to read a recent one. We were talking about which one we were going to do today. And this one is like, you know, it's
The sexy one?
I mean, well, it's debatable if it's sexy. It seems very outrageous.
Yes.
But I have to tell you, keep this in mind. I have gotten so many questions like this. Like I get a few of these a year, which may not sound like a lot, but
it's a trend.
I
Every
mean,
question
is a
you
trend?
get, no, every question you get represents thousands of people.
I guess so.
Because like that's how I always felt with like a bad review.
Right.
Like if I had a bad review, I would complain about it and they'd be like, it's just one person. I'd be like, no, it represents a huge amount of people and this one person actually shares it. Am I wrong?
No, you're
It could
not
just be
wrong.
one person too. Have you ever been to the restaurant called the Automat? Have you ever been to the Automat?
Wait, is it an actual automat? Like the old school
Yeah,
automats?
yeah.
There's a documentary on, I don't know what channel, about like the automats in the theater district, like in the, like, you know, old New York, and like Mel Brooks is interviewed and like
What
all
did he
these.
say about it?
Oh, I mean, they're just talking about what they would do back in the theater days, and they'd go and like get their little meal at the automat and what they loved to get. And it was
Me
really
and my
cool.
grandma used to go to the Automat on Fifth Avenue.
There was one still?
Yeah, there was one when I was a kid. And and the
Wow.
food just comes around on a conveyor belt.
I love that.
Yeah, the food was not high quality though. Anyway, read the question, please. Or read the advice question.
All right. So someone wrote in, and in their subject line, it said, I'm in a sexual relationship with my son's wife.
Fantastic.
I am having an affair with my daughter-in-law. I know it's wrong, but I can't stop myself.
And it's a woman.
It's a woman. I
How
volunteered.
do you know it's a woman?
Well, just let me read the question.
Very good.
I volunteered to be her unpaid assistant at her business last year just to be close to her. It became sexual after I arranged a ladies' getaway weekend
Yeah.
and made sure it was when both my daughters were busy.
Linda's mom volunteered to be my unpaid assistant.
She did.
No,
Uh-oh, no.
she didn't.
My son travels a lot for his job, and then I stay at their house to help out, so we're often together 24/7. She is okay with keeping things just casual sex, but I have become obsessed. I feel like a 12-year-old with her first crush. I know this is wrong, and if either of our husbands found out, it would destroy me.
Mm.
She is willing to end it, but I always beg her to go on. I feel like she's torturing me to subtly take advantage. I gave her and my daughters expensive bracelets, but my girls had no idea that their sister-in-law's bracelet cost 10 times as much. When she takes advantage, I obsess about losing her and double down.
Wait, how does she take advantage?
She doesn't really say. My therapist says I'm not stopping because I don't want to. I even considered telling my husband, but my daughter-in-law said she would cut me off from her family.
Mm.
I then realized I was more concerned with not seeing her again than my grandchildren or son. What can I do?
Diabolical. So what do you say?
Do you want to hear what I said?
Yes.
All right. You likely know
Can you send a picture of you and your mother and your daughter-in-law, please?
you likely know everything I'm about to tell you, even if you do not have the language for it. When folks write to me with problems like this, it happens more frequently than one would think. They're writing from a place of desperation. You were correct in not calling this love or casual sex. You are not in love with her. You are obsessed with her. That is not a judgment. There is a difference between love and limerence.
What's limerence?
I'm going to tell you. Coined by psychologist Dorothy Tenov in the 1970s, the term limerence, as described by Tenov in her book Love and Limerence, The Experience of Being in Love, is an involuntary interpersonal state that involves an acute longing for emotional reciprocation, obsessive compulsive thoughts, feelings and behaviors, and emotional dependence on another person. This type of crazy love gives us a surge of dopamine and norepinephrine, which our mind and body really like. By seeking that surge again and again, behaviors that mimic OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and SUD, substance use disorder, emerge. That damn reward center is hard at work, much to your detriment. While reading more about limerence and prep for answering your question, I came across this like medical article in a medical journal. I'm not going to read the whole boring part of it. They have a case study on how they used cognitive behavioral therapy to treat limerence. And I told her, like, I put a link. I'm like, you should really take a look at it because there's a helpful graphic that explains the circular psychology of the compulsive behavior. Blah, 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 blah. Much like with any other addiction, underneath the obsession is a profound sense of shame. And I am all too well versed in the shame cycle that ensues. That shame deepens the feelings of unworthiness that led you here, making you more desperate for the one thing that will relieve that unease, the object of your limerence, your daughter-in-law. I do not believe that you want to hurt anyone here. However, what you are doing is harmful to every single person in your immediate family. While I believe in honesty in general, telling your husband would be an attempt to relieve yourself of this burden. It would implode the lives of your husband, son, daughters, and grandchildren. That is not a necessary pain they need to carry. Blah, blah, blah. I suggested that what you need to focus on is changing your behavior and you need help. I suggested that she check out a peer support group like SLA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. And I also said, I don't entirely agree with your therapist. They've told you that you are not stopping the affair because you don't want to, and it is not that simple. I believe you want to stop, but do not know how. So I recommended that a 12-step program and or cognitive behavioral therapy for OCD, because limerence by psychiatrists and psychologists is treated as like a branch of OCD. And I told her if she wanted to email me for like help in finding a therapist, I'm good at that. This affair is not bringing you joy and is in danger of causing severe damage to all of your familial relationships. Please get the help you need. So that was like basically my answer.
I'm sure there's some level of her being also just sort of addicted to chaos. Like she needs the affair, but she chooses the worst partner or the most chaotic causing
of course
partner in the affair.
I mean, that I think there's that, but like I do think that when people get like with limerence, it's often with like people will be obsessed with somebody of the same sex when they're not, when they're straight, and they don't know why they're having these like obsessive feelings for this person. So it's not always sexual. And that's just what it sounds. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but that's what it sounds like to me. And I think that I do believe this woman wants to stop. I think she can't. She doesn't know how, and she needs some sort of professional and peer-based support. A 12-step program will probably be good for her.
SLA's fucked up because everyone's so hot and wants to fuck in there. It's a total disaster.
Is it?
Yeah.
I've never been to a SLA meeting.
It's in Manhattan.
I probably should have.
It's a disaster.
I'm sure.
But on the other hand, I think, and I'm joking, not everybody in SLA is hot and wants to fuck. I'm sure some are. But I know that any kind of spiritual program, any kind of actual action that you can take to relieve yourself of something like this
100%
will work in some way if you engage yourself in solution.
It's always action, right? It's always about taking an action.
Well, thank you for reading this.
Sure.
I'm sure there's something wrong with me that I've decided this is a sexy Ask Erin, but sexier than Annie, we'll say that. Did you find this email to be titillating at all, Howard? He's a liar. You're yes. What? Titillating or not titillating?
The email was titillating. You
Yes.
didn't ask for any video or pictures and an OnlyFans account, anything. That would have been
I didn't.
Sincerely, Mrs. Robinson. So
is your daughter-in-law hot?
Howie, this is why we should keep.
This is why you guys shouldn't have an advice column, or
Well,
why Howie shouldn't have an advice column.
Well, Howie would definitely respond with that. I think the woman is obviously in pain, but she doesn't sound like she's in enough pain, and it will blow up in her face. 100%.
And like I said, while I normally am somebody who's like honesty is the best policy, in a case like this, you'd be hurting so many people with the truth that if you can just stop it, that I really think that's the best bet. I feel like kindness is, it's not like she's had an affair and she's telling her husband, hey, I had an affair. This is like blowing up her entire family, her relationships with all her children.
But that might actually be what she wants anyway. But if she wants it, she can do it in a way that isn't so remarkably painful,
for
caustic,
everybody else,
and also sexy. I mean, she needs to get out of this situation, find sex and love in other places, and also find a way to fill the hole in other ways.
Yeah. One of the things in my limerence research is that it often, like, it's almost invariably people have like insecure types of attachment.
Every time you say limerence, all I can think is there once was a man from Nantucket. But that's a limerick, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, Erin, it's been a delight to have you back on the old show.
Thank you.
Did you have a good time?
I did, yeah.
Howie, what do you think about limerences versus limericks? What do you prefer?
I prefer limericks.
Yeah.
Very good.
Hands down. Limerence is like a obsessive, like longing for somebody, like becoming fixated on a person, where it's like the only thing that like relieves this feeling is like being close to them. It's a little obsession. What's the line from Fatal Attraction? I'm not going to be ignored, Dan.
I won't be ignored, Dan. That's like me with every guest, every prospective dopey guest. Man, I can't get fucking people anymore. I can't get people. I can't get famous people. Fucking, and then I thought we were going to be robust with famous people this year, and they all bailed. All of them. Everyone. Fucking Jason.
Maybe they're depressed too.
No, they think they're better than me. They think they're too fucking good for Dopey. Do you think they're right?
I don't know if it's, but you don't know if that's the reason.
That's why. What else could it be?
People are fucking busy.
How about Steve-O? I'm not going to go on Bill Maher because he smokes weed. We don't smoke weed here. This is a weed-free zone.
Right.
All he talks about is recovery, and he won't come here to talk about recovery. How, do you have an opinion about that?
How do you know that he won't come on because of weed or anything like that?
I just saw an article about Steve-O and Bill Maher. Here? Because we're not good enough. Because it's not big enough for him.
Maybe you're not on his radar.
I bought him a fucking omelet at Katz's. Fucking Vinny's his co-host. I've written his producer 100 times. They sat in his kitchen and he said, "What do you guys think about me going on Dopey?" And then he didn't do it. Over and over. And Steve-O is just the lowest hanging of fruit. Jason Mewes, I text with him every fucking month and he's not coming. And then why do they tease me? What's up with that?
I don't know.
Just say no. You know who said no? That scumbag Mike the Situation Florentino. He just said no.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I can move it on. What are you laughing about?
Oh my God, the situation.
Because now you have no chance of getting any.
What do you mean? Steve-O is an anti-Semite. The Situation is disgusting. Fucking Jeff Garlin. I sent him a package from Katz's. Jeff Garlin on Curb Your Enthusiasm.
I know who he is.
He said he'd come on. Then I asked him when he'd come on, and he wrote that I'm being too pushy. It's like, okay. Then he went to Katz's, and he told me he was going, and then he told everyone how much he loved me. Then he wrote me that he was going to come on in December. Then he didn't come on, and then he wrote me again he's going to come on in March. What are these games that people play with me?
I mean, maybe even with people who are in the spotlight,
yes,
coming on a podcast to talk about something really personal, like, it takes a special kind of person. Like, a lot of people can't do this.
Right. You know who else said he was going to come on? Trey Anastasio. It was set up that he was coming on. And now, Ghost Town. Ghost Town, I tell you.
I wouldn't take it personally. It's not anything to do with you. I'm telling you that I think 99% of these people, it's that they are reluctant to go and talk about this stuff.
Do you think that this studio will help get more guests or not get more guests?
If you clean up the
outside?
Yeah.
You think that's going to hurt our chances?
I think if I was a celebrity and I came here and into like the weird land of boxes, I might be like, what the fuck am I doing?
Well, when you came over, how nice was the house the first time you came over?
It was nicer than it is right now.
No, it's bad, right?
I mean, it's not like the house is so bad. It's just there are a lot of empty boxes sitting around.
I almost destroyed the whole house.
With boxes?
No, I came in the other day and this guy came over, right, to record the show. And he's like 6 months, clean, hates AA,
Right.
doesn't want to say he's an alcoholic. He's separated from his wife and kid, can't see his kid, blames his wife.
Right.
And I'm like, it was like, you got to show some accountability.
Right.
Like, you don't sound so good. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, you gotta, show, you gotta show some accountability. And he kept saying, what did he say? I'm not a victim. I think he kept saying, I'm not a victim. I'm a bitch. That was his line.
I mean, he's not right. He is kind of acting like a bitch.
So after that, we left. And when I came back 2 days later, the gas on the stove was turned all the way on. And the apartment was filled with gas.
Are you serious?
And it was fucking gas city in here.
For 2 days?
For 2 days. It was 2 days. And
oh my God.
I almost came in here and turned on the studio, but then the spark could have blown up the apartment. So I opened up every window and I left. And I closed this door and I closed my dad's bedroom door. And when we came back, this room stunk of gas still. Oh. And the question is, did he do it or did I bump against the stove and turn it on and not know?
I don't know.
Howie?
I'm almost 100% certain he did it.
He did it?
Who was the guy?
This crazy guy. Then I was on vacation.
This crazy guy.
Then it was Jason Mewes. Then I was on vacation with my family. And I told him I asked him if I could use it for Patreon. I'm not going to use that on the show.
Yeah.
And he's like, what did he say? He said, you could use it, just take out the part where I was abused. And I said, okay. And then I said, how are you doing? And he said, not bad, you? And I didn't respond because I was on vacation with my family. And like, I don't know, a few hours later, he goes, so you're not going to respond to me? He goes, I cannot trust you with my feelings then, and you cannot use the podcast. And I was like, okay. And
my God.
And then I got at it, and now we're not using it for anything.
Yeah.
But did he turn the gas on?
Maybe.
I don't think so. I'm sure I walked against it. But I've lived here my whole life. I've never done that before.
Yeah, that's weird.
Not good. I hope my dad's not listening to this part.
Oh my God.
Howie heard me telling this story to somebody else, and he was like, you could have blown up the whole building.
Yeah.
You think so?
I mean,
how many old
know.
people in a building like this probably left their gas on?
Yeah, but if somebody was in this for 2 days, the amount of like carbon monoxide, right?
Yeah, I almost killed Howie.
Is that what gas releases?
Gas releases.
I feel real dumb right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Howard, you don't know? All right. Well, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Howie. Stay strong, my brothers and sisters in and out of recovery. And fucking toodles for Chris.
Toodles.
Howard.
Toodles.
Thank you.